one of the things that technology can really help companies do is figure out how they have incredible product market fit, not just in the early stages, but then as they continue to grow and scale and keep innovating. And the challenge there for most organizations is how sort of misaligned the sales and the R&D team naturally is because of where they live. The go-to-market team is sort of living around the universe of Salesforce and talking to customers all the time. And your R&D organization is probably out there, writing code and orienting around Atlassian, Jira type services. And it's very, very difficult to actually create the seamless interconnected tissue between these worlds, which you very much need if you're going to put products in market that you're very confident that people can engage with when you're not there to shepherd them sort of during that world.
Welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Just sit back, relax, and learn from the leaders of today. It's a journey. Each one is different, unique, inspiring. Let's get started.
20-Minute Leaders is a proud supporter of Make-A-Wish Israel and Tech to Peace, and is in proud collaboration with Secret Chord Ventures, J Ventures, Riverside FM, Fusion VC, Birthright Excel, J Impact, Leap, Google for Startups, and Hippo, and in media partnership with CTech. Hello and welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Today I'm with Matt Darrow talking about enterprise software. Matt is the CEO and co-founder of Vivun. Matt's an enterprise software leader with experience growing businesses, building global teams, and delivering products. Before founding Vivun, he worked at Zuora, BigMachines, and Deloitte.
I love Turkey, California, and it sounds like the work that you're doing is fascinating on multiple fronts. Purchasing consumer behavior is shifting rapidly over these last few decades, and I'm looking forward to learning a little bit more about the space from you. And today, running Vivun, you have so much interesting experience from different organizations that you've been a part of, and Vivun is obviously doing extraordinarily well with some great news lately. So congratulations for that. Tell me a little bit about yourself, Matt. What really excites you in the world or in your own career?
Yeah, well, it's a big question. It's tough to squeeze into 20 minutes. I think for me, I'm always looking to do the hard thing, which is why I think I went down ultimately the professional journey of becoming a founder. But that parlays into my personal life too, whether or not it's climbing mountains or learning to become a pilot or studying advanced degrees and getting masters of science and engineering. This has been a common thread sort of throughout my time and tenure. And I think professionally, one of the things that excites me, if I take, sort of that part aside of just who I am and what makes my DNA, the other thing that I really love to focus on is like, how do you build B2B companies that just look and feel different than I think a lot of the mold that comes out of Silicon Valley, and ultimately get into a place that you've got an incredible culture, incredible group of people, and you're doing things, you're setting the stage in a way that other companies can follow. Like for us, we were a 100% remote company before the pandemic necessarily made that sort of a requirement or fashionable. We do a lot of investment in culture and mental health and awareness. We do a lot of different things and how we organize as a group and a person within our four walls. So I think for us, for me personally, I love a great challenge, whether that's a physical challenge, a mental challenge, a professional challenge, and along the way, trying to do things that maybe other companies aren't quite pioneering, but others can potentially look to for guidance and to follow.
Incredible. And how'd you find yourself looking into the buying space as sort of a pain point that you deeply care about?
Well, this starting Vivun wasn't necessarily a foregone conclusion. So I, even like yourself with an engineering background, after doing my master's in engineering, I was writing computer software in a very small laboratory all by myself for 10 hours a day. And I very quickly realized this probably isn't a long-term career for myself. So I figured, well, I need to sort of get out of this space of being sort of very, very isolated and was going to see what was out there. And I joined Deloitte Consulting very early on in my days. And that's actually how I got into the world of B2B enterprise applications. I knew nothing about SAP, nothing about Oracle, nothing about Salesforce.com. And I learned it all there. And I started to really fall in love with this area and this world, which is software for some of the world's largest and leading businesses. The problem sets were really challenging. The opportunities were really interesting, how you could actually change the behavior of a big company. And I also very quickly realized doing deployments and being on the post-sales side of the house also was not for me at all. Like we were writing custom software developments for SAP and, doing year-long plus implementations and deployments. And that's when I found my way into, I call it the best profession in technology that nobody's ever heard of, which is sales engineering. And at BigMachines at the time, Godard Abel, their CEO, he had hired me, gave me my first gig as an SE. And I'd been in that career then for the next 10 plus years. And it was all of those core learnings that I had on that next journey, whether or not it was companies that would get acquired or companies that we would take public. Those core learnings formed the basis for what would become Vivint, which was all the tools and the technologies that I wished that I had as I was building my teams and running my businesses. They just didn't exist yet. So there was this great opportunity to have these sort of first of their kind products in the marketplace. And what I saw during that time was this big change in how B2B selling actually needed to evolve from a world of sort of magic quadrants and golf and fancy dinners to, folks that are very autonomous, independent. The product is really the center of the universe, and that changes the dynamic for so many different companies too. So it's a very, very short sort of story around not only my founder journey, but where I went from being sort of a deep specialist in engineering to saying, hey, I actually want to do something a little bit more customer focused, a little bit more business savvy focused. And I found my way into this amazing career that is really starting to come into its own, that can really change the way that a B2B company not only goes to market, but there's a great opportunity for technologies to actually help it and help those businesses too.
So maybe can you give me a little bit more of an overview as to how B2B sales have taken place traditionally, how they're taking place today, sort of what are the big shifts that are happening, and then obviously transitioning into Vivint and how technology is now making things much easier and better?
Yeah, well, so my prior life before founding Vivint, I was always at B2B companies of different shapes and sizes. Before that was Zuora, their publicly traded subscription billing system. I was there from very, very early days to the IPO. Before that, BigMachines, which was configure, price, quote, really tackling the sort of quote to cash cycle. Ultimately, they got purchased by Oracle. And a lot of these companies, our sales motions and tactics were the tried and true motions that folks like PTC and BMC and Oracle and even Salesforce to some extent made famous back in the early 2000s, even the late 90s, which was very much, again, based on relationships, and then also based on, driving the customer through your process. And then at the end, because it's enterprise software, hoping that the delivery team could somehow figure out how to make all this stuff go live and, the customer actually gets some semblance of value of the vision that you were selling in the first place. And I think the big change, even over the last 5 years, there's a bunch of things that have hit us. I think the first is, the pandemic has affected so many things in our lives. One thing that it's really done is it's made buyers really, really comfortable operating autonomously and independently. The second thing is, and you actually see this when you look at all the great publicly traded SaaS companies out there, over half of them have motions that start with their product first. So like half of the publicly traded SaaS market cap is actually on companies that make their product the entry point into a conversation with their business. And then you also see brand new sales compensation models actually started to come out where that old world of, hey, I do a big $1 million contract and hopefully Deloitte and Accenture and the GSIs will make this customer successful 18 months from now. But yeah, I've gotten my commission check already, so I don't need to worry about it. That's going away. So like a Snowflake, the reps and the team at Snowflake, you don't even get paid unless the customer's consuming the service. So what all that, like the big change for me is that buyers now are pretty darn sales-proof. You can't medic them into submission. They want transparency in the product and the process. And that's putting enormous pressure on every B2B company to give them immediate access to products that just have incredible product market fit, to be able to take the people that are the true experts in their solutions and actually not have that be a conversation 10 steps down the qualification process, but the first thing that happens. And then that has a whole host of other things that need to occur, which is, well, then how do you allow that to happen when you're not in the room or on the Zoom? do that organically, do that autonomously, and do that with extreme transparency and collaboration, right? That's the opportunity in B2B right now is how do I address the needs of these sales-proof buyers by giving them a different experience? Because going through, sort of a traditional sales mode and methodology isn't what folks are very interested in anymore.
So are you helping teams reflect better on the core values of the products and take, existing value propositions and existing, features of the product and then creating a better channel for transmitting that information or for communicating that? Because it sounds like you're saying, the old sales approach where you're sort of making them surrender, that's a thing of the past. Now let's see how we can actually take the core values that you're providing and bring them to life. Is that sort of the way that the world is shifting?
Well, I think one super tangible example would be in my prior lives. It was nearly a fireable offense to allow the prospect to engage with your product and service before the deal was closed.
Interesting.
And that was because a whole host of challenges around it would add steps, it would add time, it would, is it going to uncover something that potentially you can't deliver on? So there was this sort of that different way of being was that, hey, we would paint a great rosy picture of the world and then hopefully, we can figure out how to make it all work. So, that no longer flies with the sales-proof buyer. So for us, one of the things that technology can really help companies do is figure out how they have incredible product market fit, not just in the early stages, but then as they continue to grow and scale and keep innovating. And the challenge there for most organizations is how sort of misaligned the sales and the R&D team naturally is because of where they live. The go-to-market team is sort of living around the universe of Salesforce and talking to customers all the time. And your R&D organization is probably out there, writing code and orienting around Atlassian, Jira type services. And it's very, very difficult to actually create the seamless interconnected tissue between these worlds, which you very much need if you're going to put products in market that you're very confident that people can engage with when you're not there to shepherd them sort of during that world. The second, very, very large dynamic too. So that's one of the core things that we focus on is how do we create an incredibly near real time or seamless interconnected tissue between what we're building and how we're taking it to market. So you can put products in market that just have incredible fit that customers are just really excited about. And then part two becomes, when we bought, the very, very famous security monitoring system Snyk out there, my co-founding CTO, the very, very first conversation that he had was somebody in the sales engineering team at Snyk's side. They were the expert, right? We didn't need to know about the company and their growth trajectory and their market and how much funding they've raised and, who our, account manager might be. We had very, very specific questions on how we thought this would help us against the 2 or 3 other competitors that we were evaluating with. And what's happening is that there's this very big change that's happening in all these companies that the folks that are the true experts in the product and the solution, they're in demand like never before. There's this huge operational burden that every B2B company is going through, which is how do I give them a consistent workflow? How do I monitor and measure what they're doing and the impact that they're having that makes my flywheel drive even faster? Those are 2 very simple examples of some of the things that we do for a lot of our clients.
And so what is the actual product that Vivint does with these clients in respect to those examples that you just gave?
Yeah, so for us, we have a very similar long-term product strategy that, Atlassian has or a Zendesk might have, or even Salesforce to some extent, where we have a platform which runs a whole family of products that can be used independently.
Right.
But when you use them together, you get this great halo effect, very similar to how I can be a Jira user without using OpsGenie or Bitbucket without using Confluence. Same thing for us, right? You might come in and use Hero without using Eval or Eval without using, our 3rd or 4th products that we're bringing to market, over time too. So for us, Hero, our very, very first product that we ever brought to market was really focused on those first core 2 tenets, which is how do we create this connective tissue between the field and R&D? So we become the conduit where all of the sales, post-sales, pre-sales conversations are thrown into the world of Hero. A bunch of data science that we've got, patents that we're publishing on goes and it clusters all of this information, ties it to business value, highlights the most important things that you want to push forward as capability sets. And then because we plug into the delivery system, when R&D actually ships code in real time as CI/CD is taken off, we go and we reactivate the field. these are the deals, the counts, the customers that we should go back and actually, go back to. This is a huge area for us that allows us to lift attainment for clients and sort of in that mode. In the other core part of Hero, that's just part of sort of the job of running your business unit. So for us, like a client like a Snowflake or a Dell or an Autodesk or whomever happens to be an Elasticsearch, their whole workflow and their process of how do we engage these new sales-proof buyers runs on us. The deliverables that we do with them, how we staff our teams, how we allocate resources, how we measure the impact. And those two things working in concert really forms the basis of what our first offering Hero was. And then Eval extended that further to say, well, when product becomes the center of your universe, that means every evaluation is very hands-on. So how do you and I come together and agree on my requirements and proving them out and knowing exactly what I'm signing up for, holding each other accountable together, and then passing all that information downstream for the rest of the organization to use once you actually sign on board.
One of the things that I'm always curious about in these companies that have multiple offerings that, like you said, one advantage is that they can be used independently because they serve different use cases. A challenge that they present is how do you create this homogeneous feeling of brand identity and trust between the company and Vivint and not the company in Eval or the company in Hero. Yep. So how do you create that sort of brand identity where if they use one product, they can then translate that trust and brand trust to the other features, the other products?
I think one big thing in the approach that we've taken from the beginning is how do we go and build organically versus building through bolt-on acquisition. And in companies in my past and prior lives, I think because we had took the approach of bolt-on acquisition, we ended up in the place that you're sort of describing. The look and feel is different. The lexicons are different. The data models are different. The motions are different. Even the potential buyers are different too. And that causes a lot of that friction. So for us, getting to a point where, our internal R&D team builds all of our products and services, that gives them this sort of amazing sort of feel of how they just naturally work together. But the more important thing on top of that is our main persona and champion is the same across all of our products. So if you are the leader of the pre-sales organization at Snowflake or at, any one of our clients at HashiCorp or at, at Okta, you're the singular person that every single one of our products is relevant to. So we have not only multiple ways to enable your success, but we have a really great ongoing conversation with one person that then when they use our products and services, more and more users come into our world. So product people, sales people, customer success people. And, but because of who we talk to, the problems we solve, the way that our technologies work, that's how we seek to avoid, I think, that challenge that a lot of folks run into.
So essentially, and I'm assuming that each of these products that you have, dedicated teams working on them. So they're almost sort of startups within a startup, right?
Yeah, the way that we actually went through that transformation relatively recently here after, we closed our Series C fundraising round. We announced it back in May. We've got over 131 million raised to really tackle this challenge. And as our R&D team is going to, 100 plus across product engineering, we've moved from a mode where, sort of there is one centralized area and workflow for development. And now there's core pods and thematic teams that allows us to go and say, hey, these core folks in this universe, we might have 3, 4, 5 pods working on Hero, 1 or 2 on Eval. And as new products come online, it's a very, very sort of organic way that you can seed a group of folks that have a self-contained product engineering UX function that can bring new offerings to market too.
And it also sounds like an advantage that you can transition folks within your organization to different products that be based on, needs or based on, their wanting to try out different things. So you also have the advantage of reducing the churn potential of somebody who's getting burned out on a specific product or a feature that they're working on.
Yep, exactly. And then the engagement just it's just so much different because now you have a collective core unit that is working to solve the same problems and has a mission and a charter. Where I think, again, some organizations that will run product and engineering as separate pillars, engineering can sometimes feel like, either they're not necessarily aligned with their product counterparts or they can feel like It's just the queue of Jira tickets that need to work through the system. And there's not as much ownership in terms of the services coming to market, which org structures can play a big part of.
Interesting. So what do you get most excited about what you do today? If you're looking at the various things that you get to deal with, you're working on a variety of products, you're working on building a crazy company. What do you get most excited by?
To me, I love the challenge of not only creating a company from scratch, but we're building first of their kind products in a brand new category. I think that's the most exciting piece for me, which is we weren't necessarily founders that were looking for a business to create and said, well, what's a hot market that exists? What are 4 or 5 solutions that are maybe a little bit antiquated? Let's build the modern version, the 6th version. That's the most modern version. That doesn't excite me at all. It's been done before. Somebody else can tackle that challenge. I think for us, the creative process of saying there's a whole greenfield opportunity of individuals that need tools and technologies to help them. There's a way that you can change the way that every B2B company is going to market and creating different experiences. And you do that by building first of their kind products. That's what gets me going every single day. And like the sub to that, or it's relatively on even par, is doing that in a way where we really think about culture and org structure and how we build the company so that we don't follow the same patterns that I think end up, especially when you build a business to business company, could end up with politics and bureaucracy and a lot of the friction that companies end up having over time.
Matt, such a cool story. I love the insights that you're bringing with you. It sounds like you have some really, deep foundational understandings of how this market works and the different pain points and the drawbacks of this interaction with business to business. And congratulations again on the amazing milestones with all the different products that you've built and with the company as a whole. So I look forward to continue following the journey and gaining more inspiration. I learned a lot from you. So I appreciate your time and thank you very, very much, Matt.
Thanks for having me. This was great. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.